All right, should be going here. Give it a second to catch up. Hey, there we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Hobby Cheating Q&A live. Today we're going to sit down for about the next hour-ish or so, and I'm going to try my best to answer all of your hobby-related questions. Over here on one of these sides, you've got. Hopefully, everybody can hear me all right. Give me a sound check and make sure I'm coming through okay. Looks like everything on my side says I am, so please tell me if you can hear me. But we are going to, you're going to, over here, there's some comments. There's a comment box. Drop them comments in, and I'll do my best to answer all your questions. Yes, there is definitely a lot of shine in my skull. That's just polished up today, so absolutely. Looks like we got some people checking in from all over the place. Very good to see all of you. I'm just going to tweet out another little message here that we're live. So, related questions. Yay. Okay, so the idea is you put your hobby related questions over in the sidebar, and I do my best over the next hour to answer them. And hopefully this time I won't sit on the mute button like halfway through the stream and not realize it for 5 minutes. Wouldn't that be an A plus? So while we're waiting for some questions, I am going to, I'll just talk for a moment about what I'm working on. I just finished up this big guy as well as something else for Slaanesh, and that really does hopefully bring all of that to a close. And I realized I had no actual army to be working on, but if you watched Warhammer Weekly on Wednesday, I kind of went through a little Tempest's Eye list I thought was fun. And so I started scheming out some various ways to do that, to convert everything. You know, what would be gyrocopters and what would be kind of everything. And I just started grabbing pieces today and converting, cutting stuff out of Imperial Knights and frigates and every other machine-oriented thing. So that's going to it's going to be a very fun army. I'm making a prototype right now of every unit to make sure I like the sort of prototype of it. And then, assuming I do, I'll actually then go get the bits to do the rest. That's kind of the idea of the thing. So it should be a lot of fun. Fun project. I've kind of been like Slaanesh was a very straightforward project. Like I didn't feel the need to convert anything, is what I mean, because frankly, I love the aesthetic. It was good out of the box. I needed nothing else, so I didn't convert anything. But I've kind of had a hankering, if you will, for a little while to get some conversion on. So that's what I'm doing with this project. It is going to be, oh boy, convertathon. So that'll be fun. All right, let's see what questions we've got. Drop your questions in there, folks. We'll get answering them. Tyler, does AK Interactive make an ultra matte shampoo? That would be nice. That would be nice. It would really help. The problem is I'm a naturally very oily person. It helps because mosquitoes don't bite me, but it's unfortunate for this sort of thing. Uh, there you go. All right, so let's see. Uh, Hello, everybody. Yeah, well, hello wherever you are. Lots of people all over the world. I know this is a little later in the evening for some people over in Europe. I apologize. My morning was a little bit busy. Let's see. Peter says, can you mix Daler-Rowney inks with the Vallejo metal color paints, or would that be too strong? No, you absolutely can. I do it all the time. I mean, this thing that's up on the screen right now, and all of his fellow keepers, all have Daler-Rowney inks mixed in with their metals. I do it all the time. He's a little more flat. I didn't go quite as flashy on him because he was a little bit more of a speedier project. I wasn't looking to be to take a super long time with him because he was just sort of a fun unwindy project, something I had sitting around for a little while, and I was like, you know what, let's just get this done. So just powered him through and just tried to make him look nice, but not go into the nines for him. So there you go. But yes, I mix them all the time. Payne's Gray is great to darken your steel and give it a nice blue tinge. works wonderfully. Nico, question. When you varnish, do you use a separate airbrush? Do you clean it after varnishing or just continue using it for paint? Do you add mediums to matte varnish? Great questions. Yes, I do use a specific airbrush, but it's actually the same one that I use for like base coating and everything. That is to say, like, I have a fine detail brush, airbrush, and I don't use that to varnish. But like my priming slash base coating slash kind of workhorse airbrush is what I use to varnish as well. Do you clean it after varnishing? Yes, but no more so than normal. That is to say, like, I just basically do the same thing I always do to clean it. I actually recorded a video today that you'll see in a while, because just the nature of the schedule, about how to clean your airbrush in like 20 seconds. Because I'm tired of people saying that using an airbrush is hard and requires a lot of cleanup time, and it's so time consuming, and I get clogs and it doesn't work, and I'm like, it doesn't. I never have clogs. I can airbrush for 8 hours straight, ripping through paints, grip them and rip them, like 20-second changes in between. And so I'm going to show you how to do that too, because it's very easy. So anyways, yeah, the answer is yes, I use the, I just continue, then I will use that for paint. I mean, like, I clean it out. Do I add mediums? No, I don't add any medium, as it were, but I do add additives, which I think might be what you're asking, Nico. So like I do add a couple drops of flow improver still, even to my varnish, just because it's always good to have a couple drops of flow improver in there. Like, it doesn't disturb the varnish at all and will actually help it lay down a more even coat. So in general, I'll almost always have like a little bit of a little bit of varnish in there, or sorry, of a flow aid in there. Okay. Nathaniel, will you magnetize your current project? No. No, I will not. I never magnetize anything. I hate magnetizing figures, like weapon swaps and stuff like that. Commit. Just commit. If you want it to have a different loadout, get a second one. That's my answer. That's harsh, I know, but like, magnetizing things is just asking to lose pieces. Like, every knight I've ever built, I committed to, like, this is the knight, this is the way he's built, and if I don't like that, that's too bad. Like, I make the choice. Magnets are just touchy, and it's very easy to like lose a hand, and then what are you gonna do? Like, you're just out of luck then. So the only time I'll generally use magnets is if I want something to stay mobile for some reason. Like, if I was doing a big Titan and wanted him to be able to like turn his torso still, there I would probably do a big magnet and flatten that out so that way he could like rotate, and I'd do a big N52 magnet or something. So if it's for like some kind of scale modeling purpose, I'll magnetize. But just for like weapon swaps or something like that, nah, just buy another one. Or just get another one, or beg another one, or get the bits and build it out of what you got, or whatever, or just don't have a second one. Don't have that weapon loadout. Okay. Let's see. Jeff Bryant. I want to move from painting flesh with a traditional layering technique to the painting on the miniature style you employ. Could you suggest a coarse set of paints for getting started with this? Sure. Pro acryl. If you or just heavy bodies, traditional heavy body acrylics, like from Golden or Schmincke or somebody. But yeah, I like if you're talking about a traditional miniature paint, Pro acryl is my new favorite for that sort of a technique. It's thick, it's creamy, it smooths out really well, it stays wet for quite a long time, and it's wonderful for that kind of like wet blending painting on the miniature stuff. Um, so yeah, that's what I would say. And they have a good set of sort of flesh colors. The original recipe scale 75 is also good, and I frequently mix that in with that, as is War Colors. Like War Colors Flesh 5 especially is really nice. I like their Flesh 5 and their Flesh 4. One is very pink, one is very shadow color. So like those three ranges is where I do most of my painting on the miniature, and I find them all highly valuable. When I'm doing my flesh tones, I'll usually have, like, I did a Space Marine's head recently for like a Golden Demon piece, and it was, the face itself had probably 9 or 10 colors of paint in it, and it's this much space, because he had something on his head, and they have the chin thing. I just think that like faces are unbelievably expressive and fun to work with and fun to play with those colors on. Like flesh is just fun to mess around with because like that was part of the challenge with this guy that's on screen right now. It was just a fun chance to mess with like weird colors for flesh and just play around, right? Good evening from the Netherlands. Good evening to you. I was just over in the Netherlands not too long ago. It was very nice. Let's see. Okay, Anthony, question. I'm working on a. Where are we at? I lost it. There we go. Okay. I'm working on a Living City variant, but I'm struggling with how to get a foresty feeling on the 25 mil bases. Sure, it can be tough. Here's my best answer: layers of stuff. So what I mean there is, have people up on rocks and logs and things like that, and that'll give you more space to play around with the miniature itself. And when I say layers, I mean like use some static grass maybe a little bit, and then put some tufts over top of it, and then put a couple little flowers around. Like you use these little micro things. You just kind of apply everywhere. So you put down some mud, you drop a little grass, you throw down a couple tufts, you drop in a little tiny flower set. And like if you use yeah, here we go. If you use like these kind of flower sets with these, which like you can get these from Mini Nature, you can get these from Annie the Dice Bag Lady. Still has a bunch of nice, really nice tufts and stuff. You can get them from Gamers Grass, and I'm sorry, Annie Bad Squiddo Games. That's what she is now. Sorry, it's hard for me to switch. She changed her name to her company. Bad Squiddo Games has a bunch of them. But like you can get very small with these. You can really pull these apart. And so if you kind of layer all that and then you stick a log in there and then you glue your fig to that, or you stick a rock in there and you glue your fig to that, it gets that feeling of being foresty. You can then also use one of these little dudes. This is like one of the little Green Stuff World leaf punches. You can go grab, the trick with these, you go grab yourself like a coffee filter. You just stain it with some inks, various colors of like sepia and orange and stuff like that. And then you just go along and punch, 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 punch. And you get a bunch of little leaves and you can just sprinkle those right on top. And like the key with that kind of nature is it's very layered, right? When you walk out in nature, there's just layers and layers of stuff because no one's walking around cleaning it up, right? So there's dirt and then there's grass and there's little rocks and nuts and gravel in there and branches and twigs and leaves that have fallen on top and just kind of all that, right? So when you layer it similarly, even on a small base, you can kind of get that impression. Hopefully that helps. Burt Macklin, oh yeah, FBI. I was just watching Parks and Rec with my wife at lunch. What is your go-to gap filling method when building your models? I have found green stuff to take a lot of time to look good, and putty takes many layers before the gap is gone. Boy, I'll tell you, if I solve this problem, I'll tell you, it's challenging. What I want to build is I've got myself some Tamiya extra thin cement, and I'm going to build myself a little goop bottle. I have an extra bottle of some old ink. I have extra sprue bits. So the trick here is you take a glass bottle, you put some Tamiya extra thin in there, you put little sprue bits in there of plastic, like the little bits of sprue you get off of when you cut and things out, and you get tiny little pieces of sprue. You drop some of that in there and you get a goopy mixture. And I think that'll be the best. Now, what I actually use for putty most of the time, because it takes a lot less and it shrinks very little, come here, is this stuff, which is Deluxe Materials Perfect Plastic Putty. Okay? This shrinks very, very little. It dries at the tip all the time, so every time you got to like unclog it. But it dries really hard and solid and doesn't shrink much. And you need so little. So it's kind of my go-to in the putty world, and it's pretty good. I'll like I sort of over apply it, and then just grab a file and sand it back down. I find that if you over apply and sand, you can usually get away with one layer, and that's all you need. I just did it on a model for this army that's sitting back behind me over there, and it worked just fine. Hopefully that helps. But yeah, I'll report back on the plastic goop. Depending on how effective my experiment is with it, I'll do a little hobby cheating on it. Nathaniel. Let's see. Okay. Yep, just answering somebody else. Narcolepsy. Posted this on your last vid too. What's the best way to deal with... Oh, yes. Slotted minis like chain rasps while adding verticality to your bases. Yeah, that's a great question. Sorry, I didn't get to answer you yet, Narcolepsy. I did see that question come in. I just haven't had a chance to sit down and answer questions today yet. Yeah, I mean, I would cut the slot off is my honest answer and like just deal with that. You like, but here's kind of a simpler way to do it. Instead of cutting the whole slot of base off, the whole slot of piece, cut it down to like, you know, like if a slot of base is normally this long, cut it down to like this much of the slot left. Now that's clear. You probably can't see it. Cut it down to a thin piece, right? Like something along that size, the tip of the thing. Let's say about a half or quarter centimeter of that slot left, because then you can much more easily like force that down into something. Like you can dig out a little hole with your X-Acto into a rock or into something, and then you can putty over the rest of the slot of base and then just build on top of it. I used to actually just, as an easy, quick, simple trick, I would just literally take a piece of masking tape and cover the slot except for the area I needed to use, and then just put all my like ground and basing texture on top of it. Like it'll get super solid once all that dries up. You just need something so that it doesn't leak through. So my advice is cut that slot either way down, or if there's enough ghosty tendril touching the ground, just cut it off completely. And just really get him like stuck in there. Or like if you have something vertical on your base, like let's say you had this little, fountain piece on your base or something, you could like rest him up against that so that you've actually glued him there to there. So you don't have to rely on the tip to touch. You can kind of push him up against something. All right. I'll answer something accordingly in the comments. Boom, boom, boom. All right, Andrew yells, how would you go about painting Black Horrors of Tzeentch? I want to differentiate for summoned units, and black would work well with your scheme. I would do a standard Zenithal Prime with them, and then I would use a mix of very thin black and either red if they were meant to be pink horrors, or blue if they were meant to be blue horrors. And I would get it in a very thin glaze, like 8-to-1 thinner to ink, and I would just slowly glaze them down, pulling down and letting the airbrush stop where I wanted the most paint collected. And that should give you basic, and then I would then go back and just pick out the details, because they're kind of just little gumballs, so it's like they have a pretty uniform texture. You could then go back with your brush if you wanted, like pick out the edges of some muscles and fingers and knuckles and stuff like that with like a mid-tone blue-gray or a mid-tone red-black, and kind of add that detail. But then you could even glaze over it again to kind of bring it all in spectrum. So I think that's probably what I would do, because then there's still a hint of their original color in there. The reason I say red ink is, one, because there's not really much in the way of pink ink. I mean, you can get magenta ink from Daler-Rowney, and it's a really nice color. I like it. So you can use that too. It's just red tends to mix better with black, and red over white turns pretty pink anyways. So there you go. Plus the red might work better because you might want them to feel charred. Just a thought. All right. Konstantinos, question. Will you be painting more Ironjawz with the new launch? Also, can it also be a 4-hour video like the Cities one? Got a lot of work for Armies on Parade with that one. I'm sure we'll be doing the Ironjawz video next Wednesday, and I'm sure it's going to be pretty long. Like, yeah, don't worry. We'll tuck into that one. Now, will I be doing more figs for them? I don't know. Maybe a little. I mean, I have everything I want in my Ironjawz army. I might add some more Ardboys and a second Maw-Krusha. That's basically what I'm looking at. I'm just trying to decide if I really want to mess with them. I'm going to wait till I kind of get the passion up to work on them and then work on them. They're a fun in-betweener project, because my army's big, but they're painted to like the whole army's a display quality paint. So they take a while to do. It's like they're not a fast project. So I really have to like be in the mood to sit down and be like, all right, I'm going to spend, 40 to 60 hours on this unit. And if I do the Maw-Krusha, I mean, that's a huge project. I have the conversion in mind. I'm very excited about it. It's just like, I have to go, okay, well, I don't want to do anything else for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. I'll probably use it to reward myself after I finish something for Golden Demon. That's usually how I try to do it. Like, put a fun project in between the competition stressful projects. So, there you go. Jonathan says, do you store your airbrush in a solution to make sure it doesn't rust? I heard some people suggest that. No. No. Absolutely not. That is crazy. Your thing is like, if you have a good airbrush, it's made from like things that aren't going to rust. Um, and if you clean it every time, it's not going to rust. This airbrush, this Iwata HPCS, my workhorse brush that I put primer through and varnish through, and I cannot guess how many hundreds, thousands of hours, definitely thousands of hours I have painted with this brush. It sits right there in a little airbrush stand, and it's not corroded or rusted in any way, shape, or form. It's still absolutely wonderful. More or less good as the day I bought it. But that's because it's like this HPCS is a great investment for a workhorse brush. So, no, I mean, now that being said, there's nothing wrong with it. You could do such a thing. So I don't think it's going to hurt anything as long as the solution isn't, isn't going to accelerate the rust. As long as it's like some kind of like water itself really won't mess it up because again they're all plated. But like I would use some kind of cleaning solution more than anything. But no, nope, I don't think you need to. Let's see. Steven, hi, I hope you're doing well. I am. I hope you're doing well, buddy. Stazek, hello, I started my journey in painting 2 months ago. Could you tell me why painters use inks? Yeah, sure. They're much more pigment rich. They're much more intense. They're much more thin. These are three good qualities for certain tasks you're trying to do, especially glazing and filtering. Inks are more naturally transparent because of the way that they're mixed. And as a result, when I want to filter a color or blend or something like that, the ink is the go-to because it will smooth things out and still naturally show a lot of the color underneath. And you can also thin them way down while still preserving their color. They don't break up like paint does because the pigment level is so much more intense in them. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, if you watch a lot of my videos, you'll see I use inks, especially through the airbrush. They're a dream come true. But I use them in painting as well all the time. They also flow a lot better. So for things like lining or drawing sharp lines, like to edge highlight, people who edge highlight with paint that's a sucker play. Trying to draw a sharp, thin line with paint is crazy town. Use mostly ink and a tiny bit of paint, and just to make it adhere better. And yeah, you have. I mean, it's the difference between why does your pen have ink in it and not acrylic paint? Because it because it flows better, and you wouldn't get anything out of the pen if it was the thickness of our miniature paint, right? So yeah, thin lines, edge highlighting, filters, glazing, that kind of thing. All that. A lot of reasons. A good set of inks is your best friend. Scott Baker. Hi, Vince. Love the Vallejo metal color paints. Absolutely. It is the only metal paint we use ever. Throw all your other metal paints in the trash. Thanks for the recommendation. Do you have any tips for highlight combinations using them, and how do you deal with matte varnish taking off the shine? Okay. So I've said this in a lot of videos. I'll say it again here. Don't varnish your metals, especially not if you're using Vallejo metal color. You don't need to. You don't need to varnish them. Just don't. Just don't do it. I don't varnish any metals. Never have, never will. No point to it. The Vallejo metal color is a very tough paint. That pigment is actual aluminum. It's very solid. It's not going to chip or fragment very easy. Unless you're like using some really high friction foam and you're just like rubbing them up against it every time you stick them in a carrying case, which stop using foam to transport your minis. Unless you literally have no other option. Use like a magnet case. But I don't varnish them at all. Now, as to tips for highlight combinations, yeah, I mean, in general, silver's your go-to highlight. Pale burnt metal is your other one when you want a darker color. And then from there, I'll just mix in colors like blue inks and stuff like that over the top if I want fresh steel, things like that. So, but my general run is usually like either gunmetal, steel, or magnesium. They're all slightly different tones as my low tone. And then I'll oftentimes work in some dark aluminum as like a mid-tone. And then just start mixing in either silver or pale burnt metal as my highlight. So there you go. Hope that helps. Okay. Oh yes, absolutely. The talking about little gaps. So Peter had mentioned that I use Liquitex matte varnish for filling the little gaps. Seems to work so far. Totally agree. If you've got a very small gap or a little mold line or something you need to get rid of, I have a video about this. Matte varnish or even gloss varnish is your best friend. You can just drop some in there and you're good to go. And it will, like, if it's a very small crack, that's an excellent way to cover it up. Even and you can the beauty of that is you can do it very late in the process after you've already even put some paint on. I do that all the time as well. I was thinking like big gaps, like what often happens when you're putting together like vehicles or like Night Titans or stuff like that. They're so annoying because they just have these massive seam lines in the middle of the legs. Okay, Joshua Falls. Hey Vince, had a question. I was gifted an Iwata turn one. Okay, with the trigger. With the trigger gravity feed. Okay, got it. It's got the trigger on it. Was wondering what kind of a compressor would you recommend? Just any master compressor, preferably one with a tank. I think it's about $80 on Amazon US. That is here. I don't know what it would be if you're in a different part of the world. Um, yeah, there's no reason to buy an expensive compressor. Um, I like a compressor with a tank will generally last about as long as an expensive compressor. And maybe you get a year less out of it. Maybe, I mean, I've had my tank one for a while, and knock on wood, it still runs very well. Um, yeah, it's a couple years old. I put a lot of time on it. The tank is good because then it runs the motor a lot less. It also keeps your air pressure a lot more even. And beyond that, you know, I don't think there's really anything else you need. Just that. That'll do it. I use that single compressor for everything, and it's followed me around and stuff. And it's like when I've taken places, it's great. Can't complain at all. And if it breaks, well, I'm pretty sure I've already gotten my value out of it. At this point, I'm down to like, you know, percentages of a penny per hour. So I feel pretty good about that. Okay, narcolepsy. When using gloss gel for liquid effects, do you just paint on top of the medium, or do you dye the gel with inks? Sure. Yep. The answer is yep. Depends on what you want to do. Either is fine. It's often a good idea to dye the gel just so if paint chips away or something, it'll still show that color underneath, but you don't have to. I will often just paint on top of it. So like when I do my lava bases and lava effects where I have like flowing lava using the Liquitex gloss gel, I just paint on top of it. I just I let it, put it on the raw base, let it all dry, and then just go to town and then prime it up, paint it from there. But yeah, you could mix the inks in as well. When I'm doing it on top of, that's when I'm using it for like lava. When I'm using it for like waves, like crashing waves against something, um, there I mix a little bit of the ink in and apply it because I want to keep it somewhat white and I want to keep it somewhat glossy and clear. And I'm not going to want to prime over that when I'm putting it onto a finished water effect. So it's more about where are you in the process, right? Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Steven Russo. I want to start airbrushing for mostly base coating and priming, but my space is very limited. I worry to put paint dust everywhere. Is it really a problem? And also, which airbrush to start with? No, it is not a problem. You need a 3 foot by 3 foot child's desk to have an airbrush setup. Go get yourself the foldable, like portable airbrush booth off of Amazon. If you don't want to spend that money, get yourself a cardboard box, cut out the back, put a little cheesecloth filter on it. Done. You don't want to spray at your desk because you will just get, like, paint will go places. It's going to happen. So you want to have something to contain the paint, but literally a cardboard box with the back cut out will do you. You can cut out the back and the top and just put a little cheesecloth over it or something. That way light still comes in too. But yeah, that foldable airbrush booth is all I've ever done. I run the fan for stuff like primers. It doesn't externally ventilate, but it has a good filter on the back. So you can also wear a mask of varying types if you're concerned. I don't generally wear a mask unless I'm doing something. If I'm doing anything with any kind of toxic paint or non-acrylics, I absolutely wear a mask. You have to. You can't start spraying like enamels or anything like that and not wear a mask. That's highly toxic stuff and very dangerous. For your acrylic stuff, I just run the fan and try to be responsible. But yeah, any kind of little booth like that, it takes up almost no space. Like I said, it is less than a 3 foot by 3 foot child's desk, like you would use in a kindergartner's, uh, schoolroom, right? So if you can find that amount of space in your house, because you can put the compressor right under the 3 by 3 foot desk, the hose runs up the front, done and dusted. So yeah, that's really all the space you need. It's very minimal. Let's see. Fez, hey Vince, have you tried out the Chimera colors? No, I have not. I'm excited to try them. I just really haven't had a chance. I've been messing with a lot of other paints recently and haven't had a chance to play with them. I will order them. I will eventually do a review. I am excited to use them. I love the idea. The pure pigments and mixing is a lot of fun. So, I mean, I'm sure I would like them. I know several artists whose work I quite love and adore and think they're amazing artists, and they use them almost as the main element of their painting. Anthony Rodriguez, who was just on the interview with the artist show last night, uses them. Chris Schur, who's an incredible artist who was also on interview, uses them. So, and they both achieve stunning results with them. So I have no doubt they are up to the task. To do. Getav, have you? I don't know how to say that. You comment all the time, and I still don't know how to say your name, buddy. But have you ever found that serious life events causes you not to paint for any period of time? Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, painting is my happy place, so like not stress related stuff doesn't ever get me away from it. But like I will frequently have to travel for a week or more, so that takes me away from the desk. There's been times where I've been just like really really sick and just not felt at all like sitting down, like I couldn't muster the energy even. So sure, that'll happen. Um, but in general, it is my source of stress relief. So I find myself here. Usually, if things are emotionally challenging, then I actually find myself here more. It's physical impediments, right, that will do it more than anything. Uh, there was a time a couple years back where I had some minor surgery. It wasn't a big deal. It's just but nonetheless, I was on like some pain meds and my head was all foggy and stuff like that. So there was just no way I could sit down to paint. So yeah, and I don't think you should feel bad about that. You should try to get to your paint desk if it's your happy place and try to make the time for it to do a little bit all the time. But if it ever becomes a job and not stress relief like it should be, then stop doing it, right? Or take a break or change your project or something like that. I think this is meant to be something that's incredibly relaxing, not stress causing. So, yeah, that's my answer. Okay. Still not muted. All right. I'm going to make sure. Darn it. I'm trying to watch that audio like a hawk because it's just so scary to me that I would be muted again. All right. Because I'm behind on the question, so I wouldn't actually see I was muted. Let's see. Dio, would Vallejo metal color be better to use to make a metallic wash than a metallic ink? Metallic wash. I don't know what you mean by a metallic wash, Dio. Can you help me out there with what exactly you mean? Do you mean like to wash over other metallics? Do you mean to glaze with it? Are you talking about a wash like we would traditionally use a Citadel shade color or something? Like, I'm not sure what you're asking me. Give me a little more detail on that, and I'm happy to answer. Ross, hello from Moscow. Hey, how you doing? Just want to say helpful as usual. Awesome, man. Well, that's cool. I hope everything over in Moscow is wonderful right now. Let's see. Frozen Zilu. Hey, Vince. I really love the Vallejo metal color range, but one problem I have is that no matter what I try, I cannot a whole get a hold color as strong as their model gold. Any tips on that? Oh, gold color. I guess I think that's what it was. Okay, got it. As strong as their model gold. Any tips on that? Yes. Yes. So what you want to do is you want to get the Vallejo metal color, copper, and gold. I too wish there was more to this range. Vallejo, if you want to make my year, you want to make my decade, give me a bigger range of golds and coppers to match your steel. I don't know how this hasn't happened yet. But anyways, what you do is you take 3 drops of your gold, which is a green gold. You take 1 drop of your copper, which is very red. Green plus red make brown. So the copper's a lot stronger. That's the trick. So 3 to 1, mix those together. You get a hyper intense gold. It's what I've used on all of my Imperial Knights. So if you've seen like any of my Knight Titans and that rich gold on there, that's what I'm using. I'll then put a little generally like sepia ink as a thin glaze over top with like the airbrush or very carefully with a brush or something like that, just to warm up the shadow tones. So yeah, that's my best advice. All right. Water. Hi, Vince. I keep my minis in a place where they get direct sunlight for part of the day. Do you think sunlight can have an effect on the paint job? Yes. Yes, it can. Absolutely. I mean, it's color. It can fade it. Certainly. Yeah, 100%. Like, I would try to move them if at all possible. Sun is very destructive to any kind of paint. It'll kill oil paint. It'll certainly kill acrylic paint. I don't know how long it would take. I don't know. I've never tested and I wouldn't want to. But my very strong advice would be get them somewhere that's out of the sun, because that's not gonna end well in the when that all comes to pass. Tyler, hey Vince, how much do I have to worry about acrylic paints freezing? I live in a very cold rural place and I'm worried about them getting left outside in the mail. That's a great question. Some, you should worry about that some, because they can. And most of the time, most paints, it won't damage them too bad as long as they don't get sub-zero and completely frozen through all the way. Like, they have a lower freezing point than, say, water because of all the additives. So they freeze somewhere below 32 degrees. I don't know. Exactly where is going to be dependent on, like, how much medium and what kind of additives and stuff like that they have. But my very strong advice would be try to avoid it. Now, if it happens, you want to bring them in, get them warm. Like, you put them in a little bowl of warm water or something, like, boil some water, let it cool off slightly, and then drop them in there. Sealed, not open, obviously. I'm not saying to put the water in the paint. I'm just saying, like, literally you would drop the bottle into the very warm water. Like, you want it, like, warmer than bath water, but not actually boiling. And then, you kind of warm them up and then put an agitator in there once you pull them out and shake the living bejesus out of them. And that should get rid of any, like, crystals or anything like that and redistribute everything. I've not seen many paints where it permanently ruins them. Badger had a big problem where, like, it can happen with primer. Badger had a big problem, like, last year or the year before, 2 years ago, I think, where, like, a bunch of their primer froze solid in the winter when Texas got down to, like, super cold. And that ruined that entire lot permanently. Like, they were just dead. But I think as long as they don't freeze solid, you should be okay. But nonetheless, try to avoid that. So, like, if you order them and they come to the mailbox, like, pay attention to your shipping or whatever, Connor, hey Vince, I've been working on the new GoTrek model. Sweet. I've got that bad boy lined up too. I'm gonna paint a dwarf. It'll be the first dwarf I've ever painted in my life, but I have a specific plan for him. However, the NMM on the filigree part of the axe and loincloth is turning out very flat. Any tips for doing NMM on such small sections of detail? Yeah, treat them as one giant flat surface. Here's what I mean by that. Think of, like, imagine that it wasn't filigree. Imagine it was a flat panel. Okay? So if it was a flat panel, what would happen is you'd have, like, a light line coming down here, and then you'd have bands of light going out, right? So you'd have, like, kind of a strong light band, and then you'd have other bands going out from that to shadow. Maybe you've got reflected light down on one side or something like that. Treat the filigree the same way. Just figure out, like, you take a line and you make that line, that reflection line, wherever your light is directionally coming from, you draw a light line right there, and that gets the highest highlight, and then you move out from there into the shadow, into a deep shadow, and then into a higher reflection. If you can get really hyper fine brush control with an edge highlight, you then get just the top edge of the filigree with a thin line of white. But you got to have, that razor sharp control in some kind of white ink. But that's the way to make it look more realistic. By the way, it's the same trick for, like, chainmail when you're doing it in NMM. The key is you stop thinking of it as what it is, like as this sort of individual filigree or these individual chain links. Think of it as one big flat volume and how would the light fall, and then just lay that mental map you've made over the filigree and then remove the negative space, and that's basically what you want to do. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. Connor also says happy or excited for me coming down for CanCon. Yeah, I'm excited as well. That's gonna be a fun trip. I've never been to Australia. I'll be coming down in next January, so that's gonna be really cool. Trevor, Evening Vince, just wanted to say thanks very much for all you do and your excellent videos. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm happy to do it. It's a lot of fun. I love doing this. Galen says, I asked this question on your earlier podcast, but still curious if you read or tried paints from Hataka, Mr. Hobby, Tamiya, or Pactra. I have not tried any of them, but I have remembered. That's not true. I've used Tamiya paints. I shouldn't say that. I've used Tamiya paints multiple times. Yeah, I like Tamiya paints just fine. Both I've used their acrylic line and some of their enamels. I generally hate Tamiya's pots, but I find a lot of their clear line of enamels really, really good. Like obviously X27 for gold for red is just amazing. So I've used some of their like candy coats and stuff. And to me, acrylic paints are fine. Yeah, I've done some work with them. I hate the pot. I like the paint. The paint is just fine. I've never had a problem with it. It's a nice paint mixture. So I have used that one. I haven't used the other three, so I'm not sure where they're from around here, or where I can order them. I did look up one of these on like Michigan Toy Soldier, and it didn't seem like they had them, but I haven't looked again recently, so maybe they have them now. Ariel Sazinski, hi Vince, hope you're well. Been using the Vallejo Metal Silver and Light Aluminum to highlight metal. No matter how little paint I use, it wicks straight up into the brush ferrule. Can I fix this? Nope. It's very liquidy paint. I mean, you want to make sure you mix it down in there, but that's why I don't use nice brushes for that. Like here's my very strong recommendation. Go get yourself some big packs of cheap, but not super cheap. Just put like, $6 to $10 for like 10 brushes or something. Packs off Amazon and use those. Like these kinds of brushes are what I use for that for the most part. Because you're absolutely right. I don't know if you can see that or not. There you go. Just like, some crappy thing that came out of a paint pack. Artist brush. Oh, that's my favorite brand. I use those. Like some kind of synthetic. That way, when you're done, you can just literally soak the thing in alcohol or put it into like the Winsor Newton brush cleaner, and that'll just eat it right out of there. So that's my best advice. Because you're right. It has a lot of flow improver in it, and it will do what that does, and so it will soak up. I mean, obviously the big key with Vallejo metal colors, you have to make sure you wick it out of the brush into the, into a napkin or into a paper towel or something before it goes onto the miniature. Like a traditional shade. Oh, okay, got it. So this is Dio rephrasing from the earlier question of using Vallejo metal color as a wash. No, I wouldn't do that, but I wouldn't wash miniature or metals in general. I don't generally have a reason to do so. If I wanted to do that, I would take some ink with a touch of the Vallejo metal in it, and I would add some flow improver, and I would just like apply it in the areas I wanted. It's often like you don't want to wash over a metal completely because that just dulls. For the same reason I don't varnish metal. You're putting a layer of non-metallic medium over top of your metal. It will necessarily change its metal look. So like if you need to do something like that, yeah, a little bit of paint mixed with like black ink or Payne's gray ink and some flow improver, and then just in the area you're trying to shade. So like this guy that's up on the screen, he has this nonsense up on top of his like halberd here or whatever this is, and it's his Wit Stealer halberd, and it has all this little micro detail, right, of these little fine recessed areas. What I just described is exactly what I did. Took a little bit of metal, mostly ink, added some flow improver, and then just like carefully shoved it into all these areas, and then went back over and kind of highlighted for places that I didn't, to kind of smooth everything out. So there you go. Hope that helps. Okay. Joseph Poro. Hey, Vince, have you heard about a Spanish artist called Antonio Pena? He lives in my area and he's a really good painter, teacher, and all-around nice guy. Yes, I have heard of him. I've seen his work online and really like it. At least I believe I've seen him online. Yeah, he shares his stuff. Anyway, yes, I have heard of him. But I've never met him or don't know him. Would love to. I love meeting and talking to basically any artist because it's just fun. That's why I do the interview with the artist series. It's just super fun to sit down and chat with people about this hobby. Okay, he has a channel called AP Miniatures. Is it in Spanish? I've watched some Spanish language stuff, but I don't speak Spanish, so it's hard for me to keep up when the instructor is speaking in Spanish, I'll be honest. But I'll check it out. Galen, also about the Molotov Chrome. Yes, will I get a similar effect if I use the pen rather than painting with brushes or spraying? I doubt it, but I couldn't say for sure. Only because the trick to getting the full-on chrome mirror effect is really to have like a healthy application of it. Like you want a pretty thick application. And I don't think it's going to come out of the like spongy tip in the pen to the same level. But I will openly admit I haven't actually tried it out of there. So I mean it could be worth an experimentation. But again, I just do the same thing. Like I keep some isopropyl, some 99% isopropyl alcohol next to my working desk, which is, that's obviously very, very, a lot of pure, almost pure alcohol. And by the way, never lick your brush with that on there. You will die. Um, but I use that to just clean the brush after that because it'll just zap that right out of there. It's an alcohol-based suspension in that Molotov Chrome. Okay. Oh, okay. All right, James. Hi, Vince. Thank you for all you do. I'm trying to make a very dark, almost black green orc flesh. Okay. I've been experimenting with Nuln Oil and GW or flesh regular and contrast colors, but it seems to look like just dirty orc flesh. Any ideas to make it more flesh-like? Okay. Yeah, sure. My answer would be don't use black or Nuln Oil. Like, I'll tell you how I would do it. I would add some deep red purple, which will turn basically black when mixed with green, and give you a shadow color. And that'll give, but it's still much more organic because it's an actual hue. Like that kind of onyx color black isn't the color of flesh. Even like when they depict drow, they don't usually depict them with that kind of like, truly like onyx colored flesh. Like if you really look, your brain thinks that. If you think back, you're like, of course they have that kind of onyx colored skin. They're drow. But if you go look at the art, they usually don't. They have some kind of other color or lighter shade to them or highlighting because just that would be that the pure black is too overwhelming. And it's going to really dilute your colors pretty poorly. So a little bit of red purple would give you that appropriate shade. You could also play around with some Vallejo Game Ink Black Green. It's a very nice dark, it's a very, very nice dark green color. You could use that for some of your shade or to smooth that out. But that's how I would build it. I would build it with that and then just go straight up into the green, and then I'd take it into like, if you're going to use it very red, it'd be a cold light would look good with a very warm shadow. So, you could mix in like some glacier blue or something, or some ice blue or something like that. Or if you want to keep them in a more traditional orc scheme, use some ice yellow or something like that to mix in with that green. And I think you'll get a nice effect. Okay. James had a nice thing about, oh, cool, about, yeah, call your carrier and actually pick it up at the distribution center. That's a good idea. All right. Berserk. Every time I say your name in one of these streams, Berserk, then the Berserk theme song goes off in my head. So all I can hear is like da 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 da. Okay, from the like 1997 Berserk series, the good one. Anyway, from the Golden Era arc. All right. So Vince, thoughts on creating a metallic gradient before using a strong glaze? Will the gradient's effect be minimal? No, it'll be very strong. So this is actually how a lot of Forge World stuff gets like candy coated like that. They'll do the full spread, and I've done it before too. I really like it. It's a cool effect. I'm mentioning like the Tamiyas is one way to do it over the top. Contrast is a way to do it over the top. Inks is a way to do it over the top. So like you want to go from like popped silver down to basically black because it will dull the variance when you put a color over the top. But no, I think it's a really fantastic effect. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, you just lay down that true metal and you run the gamut from pure silver down to black, and then you go with that like Tamiya clear or an ink or a contrast paint over the top, and Molto bene. You get like a beautiful, beautiful metallic gradient transition. Okay. Clubfoot, would you go warm or cool base if the model had an equal warm and cold parts? I would try to make it the same. I always try to carry elements, colors, themes from my base down into the miniature. So the answer is I would use a little of both. So if I'm going to have like some grasses and stuff that are pretty warm, like yellow-green grasses or tufts, then maybe I'll use some cool like flowers that have some blues and cold magentas in them or whites or something like that. You know, like just that kind of thing. Or I'd use, like, if I'm going to use a water effect, I'll make the water effect cold and I'm so sorry, buddy. And make the the grass and water and leaves and stuff warm. Sorry, not the water, the grass and leaves and logs warm. So yeah, I think like in the end, especially if you're dealing with like a natural base, it just feels a lot better if it actually has kind of both elements in it, but leans toward warm. I think would be my answer. Okay. Molotov works really well. It needs to be wet. Yeah, it absolutely does. Like you have a very short working time with that stuff when you take it out of there. Um, Joseph, how did you do the silver metallics on that mini? It looks awesome. Standard Vallejo metal color, buddy. That's all it is. Start exactly the process I described. I started with gunmetal on this, and then went to silver, smoothed out through the middle, took a dark ink, and glazed up into the shadows, and then went back and edge highlighted everything. And that's all it was to it. Edged with the pure silver. That's all there is to it. It's super simple and it's so rewarding. You get such a wonderful grading out of it. If you want to go fancy, if you're so fancy, you can like add in a little bit of blue or some kind of color in the mid-tone there. So there you go. All right, Ice Axe Miniatures. Hey Vince, deep question. Are we seeing trends and fads come and go quicker these days in both styles and products? E.g., I know multiple people who went all in on Scale 75 because that is what the cool Twitch streamers are using and are now selling their entire Scale 75 paint sets. Ice Axe Miniatures, or see all the hype for Pro Acryl, GW contrast paints, etc. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here all like my Reaper MSP are okay. Sure, you want to get deep? Okay, we'll get deep. The answer is yes, we absolutely are. That is a society-wide trend that's not related to miniature painting. There is a couple of good videos on, if you want to look up like the sort of, I think Bouillard wrote about it, but there's some really good postmodern philosophy out there about it, about the definition of the self through acquisition, and that as traditional methods of identification through community and family and religion and just other things that humanity has traditionally identified itself with over the past 3,000 to 4,000 years, most of our existence, where we were, and then our existence before that, we were mainly sort of more tribal, and we were defined as that in group, and that was the definition of our identity. As that has broken down in the late 20th and 21st century, we've had a need to have some kind of identity to ourselves, to define ourselves in some way. As humans seek, we are meaning seeking machines, and as we've done so, one of the things that not all people but many people have placed in there is a sort of form of consumerism. And this isn't like a capitalism bad thing, it's just a sort of statement about the fact that it's easy to define your identity by an acquisition. So you see a streamer or a person using something you want to be like them. That defines your identity for that moment, even though there's no great roots that go down in there. Like you might identify yourself as, Italian or something like that, right? And so it's a transactional, temporary association. And so it becomes very easy for it to become unmoored and lose its value, and you have to be on to the next thing to then try to seek out definition and value. So that's kind of the broader trend. So in the end, there's nothing wrong with exploring and using new things. I love getting new paints and playing around with them. I think it's super fun. I think you just want to be careful that, are you buying it because you want to use the product yourself and you're interested in the results you could get from it, from the evolution of your technique or your painting style you could gain, from the learnings you could have, Those are all valid and valuable things and perfectly good reasons to invest in something. If you're doing it for sort of that more transactional momentary rush, then I would say probably sit back and wait. My rule, by the way, to stop myself from doing this is if anything costs more than $20, I have to wait 2 weeks before I buy it. And that stops me from ever spending money on things that are flights of fancy. Other than like, your car breaks down or the water heater blows up. Like, okay, that costs more, but that's, non-essential purchases. How about that? So there you go. So there you go. Is that deep enough for you? How about that? Thank you for letting me put my philosophy degree that I worked hard to earn in college and don't get to often use to good use. So there you go. Okay. Uh, all right. Berserk gave me the opening line, absolutely, of the Berserk theme song. It's so good. I've sat and listened to that theme song for just hours on loop. There's like multiple hour versions of it. Guts theme is also incredible on a loop. Just like the actual Guts theme is fantastic. Anyway, let's see. Narcolepsy. Not sure if it's a hobby question, but I'm in need of organization. Any recommendations on display cases that don't break the bank? I've seen the IKEA model that everyone talks about. Depends on how many you want and how much what breaks the bank means to you. So here's what I'll say. These are the ones. How can I move here? Is this way going to get me out of the way? Yeah. So both of these have the same name. I don't know what it is. I can look in a second. We'll go find them. I'll actually bring them up on the screen. I love these. They're sealed. The Detolf that everybody likes, that's like $65. The problem with those is they're not sealed. They still have big cracks. And so they're not doing like what you actually want to do with a case, which is keep dust off of them. Right? So there's no point to that. Like, it looks pretty, but it's not actually doing anything. So that's kind of a problem. Let's see, probably under furniture. Let's see. Display and storage cabinets. There we go. I'm sure people were like screaming at me. The Detolf's the one people always classically talk about. But where's it at? Load more. Oh my God, there's this many of these? Good night. Boy, there's a lot of these. Really? The one that I had is not in here? This is killing me. It was like the most popular one that was on the screen when I looked before. Nope. Okay. We'll find it. I wish I could remember the name, but I'm afraid if I say IKEA names wrong, I'll accidentally summon Cthulhu back to the mortal plane. Because there it is. Fabricor. This is the one. So this is like $169, right? It's not the cheapest shelf, admittedly, but I will tell you it's a worthwhile investment. They are super sturdy. The shelves are unbelievably solid. It's like, because I've heard Detolfs collapsing before with under too much weight. They come in different colors. I got the black blue, but you can also get gray and white. I think they're the worthwhile investment. They are not, I mean, they're not sealed. They're still not airtight, but they're a heck of a lot more sealed. This room is my office is just a dustathon, and I don't have any dust problems in them. So I think it's a worthwhile investment depending on how many you need and what your budget is. I mean, admittedly, the idea of going out and spending like $500 on shelves is pretty scary. But I mean, you might be spending $500 on your next army. So I guess the question is like, do you want to make the one-time investment in some shelves that'll then last you for a real long time instead of getting that army and maybe wait for that army until the year after that? I don't know. But I like those a lot. Okay. Let's see. All right. So then, yeah, some philosophy weekly. Exactly. Yeah, I'll start a new segment on Wormer Weekly, like going deep on philosophy. Tom would also be into that. I mean, he's going for his doctorate right now in a very academic, sort of philosophically aligned field as well. He and I have lots of conversations that are like that. All right. So, Galen, how long does it take you to paint the smooth and clean skin on your models? Because painting skin on my Blood Reavers, Secretors, and Stokers is driving me crazy. Not long. Pretty fast, actually, because I rely on a lot of wet blending and then smoothing with my airbrush. So it's actually quite fast. So if you go back and watch the how to smooth with your airbrush video that I did, that's I use that a lot to then smooth out blends. But I start with a lot of heavy wet blending, especially in skin. So it's already starting out pretty smooth. I'm really just like refining the blends at that point with the airbrush. I'm not trying to do the blends with the airbrush. And I do it even on 28 mil miniatures. If you watch the Imperial Fist video, you'll see me do it on a 28 mil miniature where I'm just refining very carefully these blends with the airbrush. So yeah, I mean, that's my advice. Like, set yourself up for success earlier, and you'll do a lot better. Now, the other answer is if you don't want to work in either of those methods, then you can also use like a Treverian layering type technique, which can be time consuming, but at the same time it can be it is produces very high quality consistent results because you're just barely moving the color up and then doing another layer and then barely moving the color up and then doing another layer, and you're doing the shingles on a house, right? And so I think that's kind of another way to go. Mini Warmonger. Hi, Vince. What varnish was it that you use and which ratio do you thin it? That would be AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish, the only varnish you trust, except no substitutions. And I put a couple drops of thinner in there with it is my best answer. It's like I'm not trying to actually ratio it out. I'm just trying to keep it smooth in my airbrush. I'm glad that's well sealed since I just threw it on the ground. So yeah, like a couple drops thinner in there. That's what I use. Assuming we're talking about varnishing for the purpose of varnishing and not like gloss varnish to fill a gap or like gloss varnish before an oil paint or, something like that, right? So there's different purposes for varnishes. I want to make a video sometime called 10 uses for varnish that isn't finishing your miniature. All right. Oh, Tyler, I did not take that as a dig at all, buddy. Okay. I don't take anything as a dig. I'm a hard person to insult. I'm on the internet, for goodness sakes, making content. You gotta have somewhat thick skin. All right, Jack. How would you paint silver birch type bark on Sylvaneth? Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, sure. It's tough. Birch is such a fascinating looking tree. Um, I think I would paint them mostly white gray, and I would shade that out completely. So like I would do the whole white gray shading and transition, and then I would get a nice brown black, and I would stipple it all over there. I think that's how I would do it because you want that kind of peeling away look of both that. I just do some stippling with that brown black. I think that's probably my answer. I will openly admit I've never tried to paint a birch tree, not even in 2D, in like a background, but just like that's what I would try first. So there you go. Oh, and somebody actually answered while I was looking it up. Fabricor. Yep. Okay. Miniature junkie, but what would Kant say? A lot of terrible things because he was a pretty horrible human being as sort of even in his own time he was not a great guy. Certainly by the standards of the modern world, he's terrible. But he would certainly tell us that you would want to be careful as to what maxim you're carrying out there by buying these things and then discarding them. That it probably isn't a useful maxim to follow, to have this like sort of consumerism, and sort of buying and throwing things away. He would see that as being a very low value, and not a maxim we would want to universalize. All right. Okay. Will Wyatt question: do you use the AK matte varnish between layers? Yes, I absolutely do. I do it anytime I want to lock stuff in. So often when I'll come in and glaze real thin inks with the airbrush to add color or filters or smooth things out, like that paint is so thin it's extremely fragile. So I absolutely then varnish before I go back to working with brush. That locks everything in, gives me a nice solid save point. So if later on I kind of screw up and like my brush jumps, I can just grab a big brush and just dig at it with a wet brush, and it'll just pull that paint right off, pull the paint that I jumped the brush with, and won't touch any of the lower layers. Would you ever use varnish from a rattle can for sake of ease? For terrain, sure if I like varnishing terrain is generally a good idea because it's going to get beat up. So, and if so, what would you recommend? Tester's Dull Coat. Tester's Dull Coat your go-to out of a rattle can. It's going to be your lowest chance of like fogging up, which is the big fear with any kind of varnish. But yeah, for terrain, that's the only time I use it. Ian, hey Vince, are you interested in the new Chaos Knight at all? I enjoyed watching the videos with the Imperial Knights. Ian, you got to follow my socials, buddy. Am I? Yes, indeed. I finished one. He's back there. Here, let me see if I can. Here, hold on. Oh, give me just a moment. Where is this bad boy at? But yes, I love this knight. There he is. He was on the cover to this video. Now that I think about it, he's the thumbnail. So there he is. Now this is a mix of the Chaos and Imperial kit. Obviously, like this is the Chaos Claw and mask and smokestacks and leg pieces. But this is the Imperial. Oh, and the chainsaw is also Chaos. But this is the Imperial like ion shield and carapace and shoulder pads because I wanted more room for the smooth freehand since this was going to be Slaanesh. This is my House Divine Knight, so which was the first house to fall, and it fell to Slaanesh. So yeah. So yes, I love the Chaos Knights. I'll do more. I'll probably do about one a year. So they're a big, long, time-consuming, complicated project that I have to have like. I need a good idea. Like that one came about when I saw this piece of art of Slaanesh, and I was like, I want to paint that face or a face like that on the carapace. I think that would look awesome. So, you know, I got the idea, and then the rest just kind of came out from there. I went and did research and found a house and found color schemes and things like that. I know everybody says I always paint in the same color schemes, and like, yeah, I kind of do. I kind of use things like what's on the screen right now a lot, but I do try to vary within these ranges. Like, yes, I'll often use a blue or a blue-green or a teal, but there's a lot of difference within that range, you know? Come on now. All right. Johnny Boy. I bought the IKEA ones and just added LED strips for lighting and draft excluder to the doors to stop dusks. Oh, that's cool. That's a nice idea. Yeah, the LED lighting's a really good idea. I want to do that as well sometime. That's a great call. James, speaking of dust, other than always cleaning, do you do anything else to keep your area dust-free? No, I had like an air purifier for a long time. It's still back there. It's like back. It's which hand is it? This one. It's right there, sitting in the corner. But it's like all broken. I should need to throw it in the trash. Just laziness is preventing me from throwing it out. It didn't seem to do much. But I mean, the filter did get dust in it. I try to just dust regularly. I have 3 dogs down here with me in my office almost consistently every day. And like dogs make dander and a lot of dust. So, like, this room is just a nightmare for it. I'm always pulling dog hair out of my wet palette and stuff, but that's okay. I love the dogs. So, what do you do? Sanguinal. It's a lot of L's. Hey, Vince, loving your content. How much time in the week do you spend painting? 40 to 60 hours every week. So, I'm pretty religious about it. Like, I was painting for a lot earlier this morning. Then I had some stuff in earlier afternoon. When I shut this off, I'm going to paint until I do hang out with Doom later today at midnight. I might still paint some during that. And I'll paint until I go to bed at like 3 a.m. And so, you know, I try to get a lot of time in. So 40 to 60 hours is my general answer. Like a full-time job. That's really the key. You don't need to paint that much, but it's what I do. Hey, Vince, have you ever used Bondic for gap filling? I have not. I heard about some people use it, but I've never tried it. I'd be curious to how it works. I'll have to look that up. If you know a good review, you know, pass it along. PTV. I did the skin of 6 ogres recently. First skin I ever painted. Airbrush, Bugman's Glow Base, 45-degree Cadian flesh tone, kiss the flesh directly from the top, and 2 watered-down sprays of Lyclin. Was quite surprised at how well they looked. Yeah, absolutely. Like, getting that kind of... Ogres are great for it, too. Like, ogres are wonderful for that technique because they have such wonderful, like, folds to them. They have a lot of, like, just mass. You know, their musculature is really well defined and really over exaggerated. Witness the muscularity, right? So they're great for that kind of a technique. They'll take so well to that. So yeah. Dan Dougal, hi Vince, do you do any commission work? No. No, I do not. I will occasionally do special one-off things for people for various like reasons. My support of NashCon means I paint one fig for like the wooden spoon winner there every year. That's sort of an extra prize that generally gets given away. Um, sometimes as gifts or something for my wife, but no, I don't do any commissions. I don't like commission work. I don't do this as a job. I do this as a hobby. I'm not too keen to start making my hobby a job in that way. There may come a day, but not right now. So unfortunately, I'm not your guy. I'm sorry. Nico, question. I have a Harley Quinn model from Suicide Squad movie. How would you paint the fishnet stockings? I would go watch the sheer translucent um, video that I have, a hobby cheating video. Do 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 do. Let's see, hobby cheating. Let's scroll that down. I hate that YouTube doesn't load all this. What's it? Sheer, yeah. Hobby cheating 161. How to paint translucent sheer cloth. There you go. I don't know if that's showing on screen or not. There you go. That one. Sorry, it was my face was covering it up. That's what I would go watch. And then you just add the extra little thin lines. So like you do the whole process you see in there, and then you just literally trace the little fishnets and an ultra thin lines across there, just like doing the diamond pattern on a Harlequin model. So that is what I would do. It is a lengthy process, but I mean it's a single fig, so it's probably worth it. Okay. Meister, when you deep clean your airbrush, do you like to leave it submerged in thinner overnight? I use an ultrasonic cleaner. I'll do it once every month or two. I put it in there with a bunch of jewelry cleaner, and then I run the thing for just a long time, and then I let it sit overnight, and then I run it again several times in the morning. And that's just like more to get everything deep scrubbed. The problem is then you need to re-oil all your workings in there because you will destroy all your like oil. So you do need to oil everything up to make sure all your metal and metal joints are solid again. But yep, that's how I do it. Sanguinal, another one. I'm painting my Tau right now, and I've got to edge highlight in pure white, and for me it's really a pain. In the Tucus, I use white ink and Vallejo model color white. Got any advices? Just use the white ink. Like the model color is probably too thick. But no, I mean, I have an edge highlighting video. It's really just a kind of thing that comes good with practice. I use mainly the ink. I will mix in the tiniest bit of like heavy body acrylic white just to make sure it really sticks and is strong. And then I get that flowing and going, wick off my brush, and then just, it's a side of the brush thing. Just, running that side of the brush along very carefully. It's kind of, you have to have a sense of like how much paint is in your brush and how much is going to wick out. You want just enough. So you need to mix up a good amount of it on your palette because you're going to be going back to the well pretty often. Other than that, there's not much I can help you with. But you're on the right road. So I think at this point, it's probably just practice. How much for a creature caster commission? Well, unfortunately, the same answer. But I will be, if you paint a creature caster thing, I'll be happy to judge it at Resin Beast next year at Adepticon. That's going to be real exciting. I hope to see lots of people bring their creature caster minis and submit into Resin Beast. It's going to be a great year. So I'm hoping to see lots of great stuff. Aviad, random thought. Looking at the scale modeling and Gunpla side of things, what's the biggest points you think mini painters can take from that world and vice versa? Realism, color tone, weathering, using different materials, a lot more like craft work of understanding kind of how to use all sorts of elements in your miniature, like greebing stuff. How to properly use a host of different kinds of non-acrylic tools, enamels and chalks and pigments, and getting like realistic tones and weathering patterns and having them still look realistic and still organic. Yeah, I mean, a lot. Stuff like that. I think it's a thing we don't get to do as much in our world, and we would be really well served to do so because those scale modelers are so good at like often making a kit their own through things like greebing and other customization. And they're also so good at making it feel like it sits in the world it's in, where every piece they do is a narrative in itself. And I think that lesson right there is something that we would serve well to learn over here in our side of the community. Really think about the narrative of the piece. Like they do deeply. What's the weather? What's the campaign? Where's this person at? What's the terrain? And all that factors in usually to how they paint everything. And I think that's all good thoughts, I think, for sure. Uh, don't know if this has been asked before, but if you only had to pick 3 Vallejo metal colors, what would you choose? Steel, dark aluminum, silver. Next colors would be gold, copper. Next colors would be pale burnt metal and gunmetal. There you go. Post-human gamer. Hi, Vince from the Duchy of Burgundy. Nice. Any advices on painting small-scale faces, 15 millimeters? I never paint smaller than 28, to be completely honest. I do not like small scales. I don't even like true 28. Like, my favorite scale is 75 millimeter, and I paint a lot of monsters. I like having room to really work. And 15 mil scale just doesn't allow that as much. That being said, following the same basic structure, working in tones broadly, kind of making sure you still have some of that transition where like the T zone is highlighted on the face, and making sure you still have your shadow areas in your eyes and under your nose. That kind of stuff, like following those basic light guidelines, will still make the face feel a lot more realistic, even on a small scale. All right, Clopfoot, I just watched your Mars base video and want to redo some of my bases because the cork is too obvious. Would you take the minis off the bases? If you can without hurting anything, yes. If you cannot, no. Like, preserve the miniature first. If you don't want to go and repaint a bunch of stuff. But, like, in your perfect world, yes, I would. And I would then go and cover up that cork and grit them and paste them and all that kind of stuff. If you have, like, a little bit of cork poking out here or there, just in tiny little spots, that's okay. It's fine. It just needs to be, like, mostly covered, varied heights, uneven surfaces, things like that. Okay. Absolutely, Dan. More interviews will be coming. It's a series I love doing, and I will interview any artist that is willing to come on the show and sit down with me. I've got a couple requests out right now, so we'll see. I'm trying to get the next couple scheduled. Galen, do you think GW is going to release a start collecting set for Darkling Covens and make new models? They could do a start collecting. I don't know if they need new models. All the Darkling Coven stuff is really nice. Like the Executioners and Blackguard and Bleak Shards and Bleak Spears, whatever the heck, Dark Shards and Bleak Spears. I don't know. All those things have crazy names. They're all fine. I think they're all still really good sculpts. I think they hold up. They did the whole start collecting for Anvil Guard, but that was mainly like pirate stuff. So yeah, I mean, they could do a start collecting at some point. I think it'd be cool. I couldn't say for sure. Who knows? Maybe we'll get more cities boxes like that, and they'll show up in a big, like Battle Force box. That would be awesome. But I don't think they're ever going to make new models for them. No, and I'm not sure they need to. Like I said, I think they're really good models. So, but there you go. Joseph, who is your current favorite artist that isn't yourself and why? Nice. Probably Richard Gray, because I think he does everything I want to do. His use of like texture, detailing, freehand, and sort of attention to interesting color and light usage on models is something I really love. He has a skill with freehand that I aspire to in his storytelling capabilities. He is wonderful with creating micro detail in miniatures, which I love. I think Richard's just a fantastic painter. He's one of the best, and he's an idol for me all the time. Like, I look at his work all the time. The Painted Goomba. Would you ever do an online class similar to the ones you run at events? Maybe. Like, if here's the answer to that. If I ever decided I did want to, like, wanted to be, were going to become my living, right? If I was like, well, tired of sort of a 9 to 5 and I'll do this instead, then the answer would be yes. And I would do it through probably, Patreon or something like that. And I'd have a couple different venues for that, in addition to still traveling and teaching and stuff like that. Master Stugel, curious as to what jewelry cleaner you use. I could not tell you. I got it from my wife, and it's just what I've used, and I keep using the same stuff. Like I'll pour it in there, and then I pour it into a strainer, and then I put it back in the bottle. And it's this pink bottle of jewelry cleaner. I don't know. I've used it forever. And it's kind of gross now, but it's fine. I also use purple power sometimes. Okay. All right. Oh, we're almost down to the end, which is good because we're over an hour and I need to start wrapping up. So, let's see. Curious. Oh, sorry. Sangold, thanks for your answers. One last for me. How do you avoid mold in the wet palette? Copper wire. I use the Redgrass palette, which is so worth it because their sponge seems to be like ultra mold resistant. It does not get stinky or moldy. So that's a good thing. But assuming you're not doing the Redgrass palette, copper wire and surfactant or a drop of dish soap or something like that in the water. That's the answer. Uh, any chance of Dr. Faust coming on the interview series? I know I'd love to have him. I mean, he was the first, when I started really painting again, at first not trying to take it seriously, but still just having fun painting. I mean, I watched every video he had, you know. So yeah, I would love to have him on. What's your 9 to 5 job? I'm a product manager for a software company. Alex, I'm painting Cranon the Relentless from Dark Vengeance. Any tips for OSL with the glow of the sword on power armor? Yes, I have an OSL video. I would like OSL is the most complicated thing you can paint. Period. There is no more complicated effect than OSL. Maybe like reflective sky earth non-metallic metal where you're trying to accurately capture the world around the person is more complicated because that has like freehand elements in it too, like some of the stuff you'll see Kirill Kanayev do or Alex Ross do in his paintings. So maybe that's the one thing, but OSL is very, very complicated. I would say watch the video. I mean, the simplest answer is the source of light needs to be the brightest. It should then fade to on the thing to a slightly dimmer color, like have the center of the sword or something like that be the brightest, then fade to a slightly different color to set your hue. And then it should cast to a thin glaze of that color on the everywhere where that light drawing a straight line would hit, and it should be stronger and brighter on the edges where light would catch. That is my very, very, very fast summation. That's not going to be like, watch the video for more detail. Just a thought, Black Friday is a month and a half away. Start saving now for your airbrush and compressor. Yeah, sure. They'll probably have deals all the time on like Amazon and stuff like that, or other sites like Blick and who else has that kind of stuff? Hobby Lobby and yeah, all sorts of people. Overlord of Eki. I don't know. Hi. Have you seen how Warcry painting has a lot of two-color lighting? Like green from above and red from below. How would you keep the flesh from looking like a mutant Christmas? You keep it in skin tone. Again, like now we're into like double complicated. So if regular OSL is hyper complicated, two varying motivated light sources are like, oh, well, now we're into the real complication. I did this on a bust I painted when I did the Pharaoh that Ben Cantor had sculpted. I had fire coming from a torchlight that he was looking at somebody, and then I had cold light from the moon above, right? And the answer is you need to, it still should be skin tone. It's just skin tone with more red and skin tone with more green. So like it needs to be controlled coloration. Ashley Dale, hi Vince, what airbrush would you recommend for a beginner? If it's truly your first time, you're just getting your airbrush, I would recommend you go get the Master Airbrush Kit from Amazon, which is this thing right here. Amazon Master Airbrush Kit. Boom, 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 boom. It's probably this one. I purchased this one time. Hey, there you go. March 13th, 2015. That's when I got my airbrush. How funny is that? So I've been using it now for more than 4 years. So at any rate, this is the kind of kit that I would recommend to start with. You can get either this one, which has like the tank with it, or this one that doesn't. Depends on your tolerance for sort of cost. But this has like the hose and a pretty standard G22 airbrush and needles and, just kind of everything you need. And it's a perfectly fine set. Nothing wrong with either of them. You will screw up your airbrush when you first get it. Like, you don't buy a 16-year-old a new BMW because they will break it and wreck the car. And it is much the same for an airbrush. Like, when you first get your airbrush, you'll clog it, you'll mess it up. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with you. It's just what everybody does because it's a very new experience to be painting with the thing. So that's what I would recommend. That'll let you learn. That'll let you get down thinning and priming, and then you can take a step up to a nicer airbrush based on what you have sort of a tolerance for. Do your coworkers or colleagues know about your alter ego, or is it a Clark Kent Superman thing? Just like Clark Kent, a few people know and most don't. By day, I'm a normal, mild mannered software manager. Berserk, is Black Templar just too dark to show through to metal? You mean like putting it over the top? Probably, but if you mix it like 3-to-1 with contrast medium, it'll work really well. Let's see. All right. Cool. And then final question. That's a funny final question. Do you think they will update Slaves to Darkness anytime soon? Yes. I don't know when, but yes, Archeon will get a book, and the Varangard and Archeon will be useful again. I'm sure they're not thrilled at one of their most impressive sculpts ever, and his retinue of the second most impressive sculpts ever, and two of their very expensive kits that people love are not actively being used or painted or bought very often, except by hobbyists and artists. So, yeah, I would think that's probably on the docket. When? Who knows? But there you go. All right. So great. There you go, everybody. I hope that was all helpful. So we spent about 90 minutes there going through your questions. These were great questions. I do this once a month on Saturdays in the afternoon. I always say I'm going to try to put the notification up earlier, but then life gets in the way. So, that's fine. If you had a question that you didn't get to ask, you can feel free to drop it in the comments. Going to enter my first. Oh, James says, I'm going to enter my first ever painting competition that starts this Monday. What non-technique videos of yours would you recommend I watch before I start? Watch the thing about. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like, I have one on like thoughts on competition painting. That's probably a good one to look at. So I would say start there, where I talk about kind of the nature of painting for competition. So. But there you go. All right. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the questions. I really appreciate you hanging out with me today. This was a lot of fun. As always, I appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.